Welcome everyone in Schema Therapy Made Simple. I'm really thrilled today to have Daniela Ho Tan, clinical psychologist and advanced certified schema therapist with us today. And there has just been so much enthusiasm about this interview, which is fantastic. And it's part of why I love to be able to have the opportunity to bring conversations like this into the group. So I'm just going to briefly introduce Danny. Danny is a Vietnamese Australian clinical psychologist and advanced certified schema therapist based in Sydney. She's the driving force between Project HoriZen and is passionate about how schema therapy can be adapted to better meet the cultural needs of clients. Danny is developing training in this area, and she culminates the wisdom from her clinical experience, her research, and together with her Vietnamese cultural heritage. Welcome, Danny.
Thanks, Nadine. It's so lovely to be here, and hello to everyone who's joining us live or later watching it back. I'm really excited to be here.
That's great. And Danny and I actually have met before. We were at the Enlight conference together, and we both knew each other's names from social media. And what happened was we were staying in the hotel, and at the lunch break, we popped into the same lift together, and I saw Danny's name on her name badge, and I was like, oh, Danny, I really wanted to meet you, and this is great. So we had a talk, and then we ended up having lunch, and that's where I found out more about where Danny was at in her career and this wonderful project. So since then, we've been in touch, and now there is this opportunity where Danny's in, because we had talked at the time over lunch, and she said, oh, I'm not really ready to come into the group yet, but then she made contact with me later. So it's just so fantastic that, 6 months from that place, we're here together and able to do that.
Absolutely. Gosh, it's been 6 months and a lot's happened in that time. So I'm really excited to share about, where Project HoriZen is going and share with everyone. And hopefully I can just help, like you said, create a space where we can talk about some of the hot topics in schema therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, let's have a talk about how you became a schema therapist.
Yes, so I started really early. So I was lucky because back when I was studying my master's, Rob Brockman was actually one of the clinic supervisors. And so Rob actually got me involved into schema therapy really early on, once I was in the internal uni clinic. He shared me this document called the YSQ. And so why don't you give this to one of your clients? They seem to have an interesting flavor. So I had a personality disorder client, a borderline client, and I remember putting the questionnaire results into these Excel graphs, and I'm like, they're all coming up high. What do I do? So it was through that I started the schema therapy journey, and I really found that I just kept coming back to it and kept integrating it into the CBT work. And then when I finished the registrar program, I was doing a lot of schema therapy training. After 2019, I presented at the Schema Coalface event that Rob hosted in Sydney, presenting on cross-cultural applications of schema therapy. So I had a bit of a taster then, and then I started my accreditation process because I met my wonderful supervisor, Silu, who I know is also has been interviewed by you and is an amazing clinician and such a supportive supervisor. They really helped me in, developing my schema therapy skills. And then I did some training with Ruth, Rita and Megan for the schema therapy inside out. And then I saw Ruth for some additional supervision as part of the accreditation. So I've had some really wonderful people involved along the way and such great support. And I think, a lot of it comes from your group, Nadine. Like it's honestly offered me the opportunity to meet people, to connect with people. And it's just like to build such a great community, which is, what you offer, and we can all learn and share from each other. And that's what I really love. Like it's all this information. I just want it to be out there to be shared because it just helps us to feel connected.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the feedback about the group and your background to how you got here. And I do love that about this platform, although social media can drive me a little bit crazy at times. One of the reasons I keep going in this role is I know that it helps us find our people and helps us bring more people to schema therapy, which is such a wonderful healing tool. And sometimes it doesn't have the level of I don't know, popularity around it that perhaps some of the other models have at the moment, but through this group and other efforts that can change, I think, and definitely gives people an introduction to it and a way to access it in a really friendly way. So that is great. And now I'm really wanting to hear about Project HoriZen. So we want to discuss about what you're hoping to achieve with that and where it's at the moment. Many of us in the group have been part of this project, I think. Yeah. So it won't be totally new to us, but it would still be great to have a little update there.
Yep. So it started out as a little passion project where I started thinking, wouldn't it be really great to explore the gaps that we encounter in, Western therapy principles and Asian cultural values? So I work a lot with Asian clients. Specifically, I think my kind of, more niche area is Asian diaspora clients. So very similar to myself, kind of, I'm Vietnamese. I've grown up in Australia. I can really feel the pull and push between individualism and collectivism, and it's just filters into the therapy room so much. And I thought, this is important work. I wonder if other people, work creatively as well. And so earlier this year, I think it was around June, I actually went to Korea to do the World Congress of CBT. And whilst there, I did some workshops. Like I signed up for all the culture workshops, and I just wanted to see, okay, what is out there? Unfortunately, most of the work is in Asian America, which, there's some similarities with Asia, Australia, but I thought, I'd like to do something that isn't just tailored for Asian Americans, that is able to be applicable to clients of Asian heritage populations, whether they are, Asians in Asia, Asians living in a Western country, whether they are adopted, whether they are clients who are biracial. I just wanted to have explore this area a bit more. And so in July, I launched my little project, which I shared with the group and had such a wonderful response. And so I did some interviews with various clinicians who practice schema therapy with Asian clients, just to better understand, from people working on the ground, okay, what do you find that comes up in the therapy group? Are there any barriers or are there any challenges that you find when working with these clients? How can we better address this? Because I want to take all that research and pour that into the workshop that I've been writing, because just because I think something is important doesn't mean that everyone might think that. So I thought, let's see if there's some consensus. And if that's the case, I can put out, trainings or information, supervision, just anything that allows people to increase their cultural competency. And in doing so, hopefully create a shift where it helps reduce stigma in Asian communities around mental health, because if they feel validated in sitting down with a therapist, they're more likely to continue and heal from that. And, a big part of it is about breaking intergenerational trauma. And that's something that is really important and really close to my heart. So it's kind of like just grown and grown and grown, really.
Hasn't it? So I guess what I'm hearing is there's a few broad goals with it. And one is about trying to increase the comfort of therapy for Asian clients and break down the stigma around that, but also to look at how we can help increase the cultural competence of therapists, and particularly, those parts of the schema therapy model that may need a little tweaking, which is really important, particularly in Australia. We've got a real change coming with the code of conduct, which is new for us. And within that is really strict guidelines around what cultural competence is. So it's no longer going to be okay just to do one unit at university and assume that you're culturally safe from that point onwards. So I think the timing of this is really fantastic for that, because there's going to be a lot of questions for therapists in Australia, particularly psychologists, around what is that actually going to look like and how can I make sure that I am current with my thinking and practice. So really, really great. And did you want to say anything more about this point about the findings of that? Or
yeah, that would be great. So so in terms of so I ended up interviewing 25 people on Zoom and then 10 people doing Google surveys, and 28 out of the 35 were of Asian background. And we found that so there were some, so I guess the top 3 challenges that came out of the research in terms of, like, you know, what do you find to be a challenge when applying schema therapy with Asian clients? So the first one was filial piety. So it's a key virtue that's not just in Chinese culture, but also other Asian countries like in Vietnam, Korea, Japan. And a lot of clinicians were saying it's a concept that sometimes is hard to explain because it's more than just, you know, looking after your elderly parents. It's tied into the Confucius belief that your body exists solely because of your parents. And so filial piety is not just about duty and caring, but about authority and power of the parents, regardless of how old the client is. So then you can imagine in a schema therapy context, when we look at things like enmeshment, dependency, or compliant surrenderer,
or even subjugation,
or unrelenting sin, is like there's it's challenging at times to figure out, okay, well, how do I balance this so I don't disrupt the harmony of the client's family structure, because a lot of these clients are still living at home or financially dependent on their parents or things like that, and help create a nurturing environment for them to reach their goals, whatever that might be. Because I was talking to some of the clinicians saying, you know, if we push too hard for them to, you know, be too assertive or express themselves too much, it can actually backfire. And then do we risk giving them a social isolation schema if they are disconnected from their family, their whole community? And we don't want that. So that was one of the challenges that we found. And the second challenge was a lack of resources linked into language and cultural barriers. So as far as I'm aware, I know that the questionnaires are translated into Mandarin, but a lot of the other languages, they haven't been translated into. There's not a lot of resources, or clinicians struggling to find the right terminology. Like, for instance, I just practice in English because my Vietnamese is conversational at best, but I took some of the resources and actually sat down with my mum and I said, do you understand this? Like, how would you translate some of this? So I put it into Google Translate and it was just a mess. So it was just not making sense. And so there's more work that needs to be done in terms of, if we want to actually apply this, clients actually first need to understand what it is that you're offering and what you're trying to achieve. If they can't understand it, we can't really go far with that. And then the third one we found was the challenges around just emotion language, limited emotional affect, because a lot of Asian clients do not have any, I guess, kind of like framework for knowing how to express themselves. There's also like gender differences and expectations where certain emotions, like let's say anger, it's something that's discouraged in females. It's seen as being unattractive if you express anger. You know, I had a client yesterday who is Chinese who said to me that she showed some vulnerability as well. She was upset, and her father openly shamed her and said, "You're weak," and belittled her by saying, "You're bringing shame to our family and embarrassment. What if other people see you? Like, stop standing there crying, like get in the car. We can't have people see you." And when you think about that kind of a response, that is so invalidating, you can understand why there is a lack of emotional affect, because it's not a safe environment to do that. So, and it's hard because in schema therapy, we're trying to bring that affect up. We're trying to help them and nurture them. But again, if you don't factor culture into the formulation and how to pace the flow of the work you do, it can actually send clients away from therapy. They might disconnect or disengage because it actually is, in a way, flooding them to be there and to try and sit with their feelings, something that is so foreign.
Well, I can only imagine the activation of critic modes that happens if you push too hard on that, and then that's going to be terrifying for some people. So that's a really beautiful example of that. And also, I think sometimes there's an assumption within the culture that we're just not as emotional as other people and we don't have the same needs, but it's actually culture that is doing that. But how to sensitively handle that and then allow someone to develop a way to meet their own needs that is also not going to result in really terrible interactions like the one that you just described, because that's not safe either.
No,
so
not
challenging.
at all. Yeah, and you raised a good point in terms of like, even just because I'm speaking very broadly about Asia, and we can break it down into so many subgroups, but actually into interviews that I did, some of the clinicians commented that they noticed changes where clients from East Asian backgrounds were more emotionally expressive than clients from Southeast Asia. And so there's like, I think each country views these experiences very differently, and it's good to learn directly from the client about their experience. And one of the things that we talked about a lot in the interviews is never to make assumptions. It's so easy to stereotype and make assumptions, and that's actually caused a lot of clients to drop out of therapy. I certainly have had my fair share of stories from clients who said, the clinician just assumed that I have tiger parents, but actually my parents are quite supportive. They haven't actually given me pressure, but that assumption made me feel uncomfortable that they're just labeling me in a certain way and treating me as how they think I am, not how I actually am. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the difficulty that not the difficulty, but the stereotype actually dampens the curiosity of the therapist, because they're just making these assumptions. And, even within a cultural group, there's quite different structures and things like that go on. So yeah, I think that's unfortunate, and sometimes I guess it can happen with any identity type. I wondered, actually, it's not something I've talked about, whether there is much opportunity for Asian background clients to meet with Asian therapists, or is there still a real... I actually supervise quite a lot of people from different Asian cultural backgrounds, but it's hard for me to get a sense of what the ratio is of non-Asian and Asian therapists based on that.
So there's actually an organisation that I only discovered, I think it was last year, called Just Shapes and Sounds. It's the first Asian Australian kind of mental health community that has a practitioner list of all the Asian Australian practitioners. So it's a mix of, I think, psychologists, counsellors, social workers, but they're mapped out state by state and also online. And the great thing about Just Shapes and Sounds as well is they provide community check-in events. I know there's one next week where anyone from the community who identifies as being part of the Asian community can go in and check in. I think they have breakout rooms where you can do either guided meditation, journaling, talk about your experiences and connect with others. And then, there's an opportunity to find a clinician who is of an Asian background through their list. And then each quarter there's a clinician supervision group, and I've partaken in some of those. And it's really quite nourishing to build that community. And I think that's linked into me reaching out to a lot of people in our Schema community, because it is nice to be able to connect with others and learn about their experiences and how they do therapy. And then I get a lot of requests coming through for clients who I might not be able to take on, but they ask, can you recommend for me someone who's got of a similar background, because I feel like they can better understand my experiences. And so it's been helpful. Like in the group, it's quite easy to just put in a post of like, this is what I'm searching for. And as you know, there's so many people who just put their hands up and go, I want to help. And I think that's great, but this is something that we can access. People in the public can't access that. So it's important to me when people reach out that I just try to support them in finding that as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's a problem. The whole what the community can access and what we can access is a problem everywhere, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think this thing of it would be great if more therapists could provide an attuned and culturally sensitive practice so that people don't have these negative experience and feel like only another Asian person will get it.
Yeah,
And because I've seen
absolutely.
that actually with the African community, and there's a lot less African origin therapists in Australia than, and then it creates quite a burden for those therapists because their books fill, and it's so what you're doing I think is really important, not only for any therapist or client that identifies as having Asian culture background, but also for those people who are able to offer a much better culturally sensitive practice, and that alleviates the burden on all the Asian culture.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember when I went through the ISST, find a clinician or find a schema therapist, and I went through and I was having a look at just trying to work out, okay, well, how many people from, I guess minority type of backgrounds are there? And there's a lot less accredited schema therapists there. And so I thought, okay, well, it's also accessibility to the trainings. When I was interviewing some of the clinicians in India, they advised me that, it's really expensive to get accredited. We just, our cost of living, our income here, it does not really support us being able to access these trainings or go through accreditation. And I think that's something that's really important. And so definitely I've had clients and who've also had really positive experience with clinicians who weren't from the same background. Some people actually prefer not to have someone of the same background because even though they understand confidentiality, there's a part of them that worries about, you're a part of my community. Is this going to somehow leak out? Even though in theory, they know we would get into so much trouble if anything like that were to happen. And some of my
a lack of safety there.
Exactly. And some of my friends who are clinicians of various backgrounds work with Asian clients and work so beautifully. They really take the time to get to know the client, to understand the experiences. When I spoke to you, because I was lucky enough to interview you for my research, and being able to hear the way that you approach the work you do, I think, that demonstrates that you are actually taking the time to consider, not just their cultural background, religious background, socio kind of background. There's so much there because culture isn't just about ethnicity. Culture exists in so many shapes, sizes, forms. So it's important to understand that. And you're right that if we can create more competency there, then it just helps everyone be able to share that load of making sure we are supporting people who are in need.
Yeah, and one thing, this is a bit of a curveball because I didn't mention it in our presentation.
That's okay.
But one of the things I think, as someone who really mostly works in supervision and consulting at the moment, that I've come across, which I find just really sad, is there's discrimination that is really going on that impacts Asian therapists as well, and a sense of perhaps not being wanted as much as I'm just going to say a white therapist. And so I'm sort of working quite hard in coaching and supervision to try and actually work with that and reframe it and look at what the strengths could be from having this point of difference. But yeah, I just wanted to say to anyone who was watching that I think the work that Danny is really great in that, and definitely work on that within yourself if you've got sort of the internalized racism from what's happening. I'm sure it's happening in other cultures outside of Australia, but I can only really speak to Australia around that. Because there is such a need and there is such a place, and the work that you do is beautiful. So keep doing it and keep believing that you are just as allowed to do it as everybody else.
And email me and you can come and join me in my research and any projects, because I love connecting and sharing. And so if anyone ever wants to, or just to talk about it, I'm more than happy to, because Nadine's right. Like there's the mixed messages. And I think when I've been reading a lot of books about, I guess, backgrounds in like Asian psychology, Indigenous Chinese psychology, and it's been really interesting learning about each kind of country's take on psychology. But like a lot of the values tie into, not standing out, not, being modest and being part of the norm. And so it's hard to then kind of put yourself out there. I certainly know I struggled with my own imposter syndrome. I know that's what a lot of us have struggled with, but like putting yourself out there publicly. And this is where I think, Dean, some of your courses do really well, is because it helps build the confidence to do that. Because I feel like with a lot of people from, I guess, a similar background to myself, it's quite anxiety provoking to really put yourself out there because of the fear of the, shame or embarrassment that you bring not to yourself, but to your collective. And because there isn't as much representation, perhaps, I then start to worry, am I accurately representing the culture? I can only speak about my experiences and my work. So I don't want to assume that I'm speaking about all, which is why I'm hoping people will jump on board as part of the conversation, because I represent my unique perspective, but there's a lot of other perspectives that deserve to be heard and seen.
And also I would just like to extend that to encourage people who want to offer things in the mainstream space. So you don't have to come at this from your identity of Asian cultural background as well, because for me, that's where I'm finding the barrier is coming, is this sense of, the privilege that comes with whiteness is then going to block me from being able to be successful at this. And I don't think that's true. I'm not saying it is, doesn't have its own challenges, but certainly to just stop at that point, I just want to say to everyone, don't do that, and things are really changing, like things are there. And the one wonderful thing about internet and social media is the right people will find you, right? So it's not like the old days where you had to go through all the old boys networks to get to where you wanted to be. You literally can create your own brand and your own essence. Absolutely. Run with that. And I guess from what you're saying, there will be some possibly cultural barriers around feeling like that's okay, because you're sticking your head above the parapet. But actually, I think almost everybody has that problem as a therapist. It's kind of like, here I am, I've got something to say. So anyway, it's all very exciting. I get very excited about all this stuff.
Me too. We can talk about it all day long.
Because there's just a lot of knowledge and experience out there that sometimes doesn't have an opportunity to be shown because of these kind of blocks. The other thing I just wanted to talk about briefly, and I did mention it to you during the research discussion, is that I think there's also times where some of these rules from certain Asian cultural backgrounds creates problems when you're trying to lead in your workplace. Because say if you've got a supervisee and they're older than you and you have to give them some feedback, or they're a different gender to you and things like that, and really struggling with that, but finding a way to have sort of a two worlds aspect to this has really helped some of the people that I supervise, and sometimes they haven't recognized actually that the block is coming from this cultural rule. And then when we look at it, say, well, that's right, because if you tried to do that with your uncle or your dad or something like that, that just would not be okay. But this is different. In this role, you're the team leader or the supervising psychologist, and this is your job. And so how do we help you to feel comfortable to do that?
Yeah, I think that's where the modes work really plays in beautifully. And you're right, because I'm thinking one of the interviewees I had said that she only noticed, I guess, as she was communicating with her team, that when she spoke to men, her voice would get softer and she almost felt like more timid. And she actively worked through supervision to be able to, have, this is my healthy adult, assertive, manager voice, and that's okay. And, they do respect me. And it was just breaking free from that mold, that expectation that, this is someone that's older and male.
Yeah.
I should be respectful and communicate in a more passive way. So it's interesting that, I think you bring up a really valid point.
Yeah, that's great. So let's have a talk about the differences in the way you might approach or conduct an experiential technique with Asian clients.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. So I think even before I started, it's the setup firstly. So things that I would consider is, making sure I have a really good formulation, that I understand what their experiences are like. And so, if for people who aren't sure of, okay, well, what kind of questions might that be? Sometimes I'll lean into, let's say, the young parenting inventory, or actually in the DSM-5, there's a cultural formulation interview in the appendix towards the back that has some good questions, and it can be helpful to know the structure. Language is so important, as I mentioned, language being one of the barriers. It was actually in Korea when I was at a talk, I think it was Professor Arnold Artz's talk, but one of the Korean psychologists put their hand up and said, basically, we have an issue with the term limited reparenting. It feels disrespectful. I had never thought about it. And I'm like, Okay, because essentially, in a way, they feel like they're saying to the client, your parents, didn't parent you well enough. So now we're coming in and doing this. And I thought, oh my
That is
goodness.
essentially what's being said, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. But then it's like, but that would, yeah, exactly. But if you say it in that way, I wonder, well, they would say people will just leave. They're not going to sit, stay for therapy. And thought, okay, well, if we need to have the buy-in, we do need to make it at times more neutral and work our magic slowly. And I guess it's where, sometimes it's more helpful to use the term critic mode versus parent mode, especially if the internalized voices aren't always from the parents. And in Asian cultures, sometimes it's not the parents who are raising the children, it's the grandparents, or it's the nanny, or it's the uncles and aunts, because of the collective nature of it. So
I think that's actually super important.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I have dropped that parent word like many
I have to.
It's long gone, and largely because it isn't always the parent, but I think it just creates a more flexible mode to work with when you get that out. So anyway, sorry. Then
that's all right.
So what was the conversation about the limited reparenting?
I was thinking, and then I guess if we're looking at leaning into more, I guess, neutral terminology to introduce it, you do things like, say, limited re-nurturing. It doesn't have to have that parent word attached to it, and sometimes that helps the client at the start feel more comfortable in this is what we're doing. And then I think once that's kind of established, so there are sometimes some modifications I make in how I do, let's say, imagery work. So even just with, let's say, working with someone's vulnerable child part, their little part, some of the clients actually associate that part as having they're a Chinese, or like they're using their Asian name. I had a client who had their childhood nickname that wasn't in English. So if I were to say, oh, what's little Danny thinking? She would go, oh, that doesn't feel right, because that's not how I was referred to when I was growing up. So sometimes it's little tweaks, little language to make it feel, I guess, easier to connect with. And then depending on the client. And so the important thing is to work really, kind of be slowly, check in with them constantly, which I imagine a lot of clinicians do anyway, check in, how's this feeling for them? If it's a family structure where let's say with Chinese clients, so I work a lot with Chinese clients, so I think that's why it comes up, is when I enter the image, sometimes I check in around, well, what would you want me to call your parent? Like, how would you like me to address them? A lot of my clients say, yeah, you can call them auntie. And so it's showing respect, but then I'm able to speak with a level of authority and compassion to address their parent, and they feel comfortable with that. Whereas in the past, when I think when I was first starting out and I was really sticking to the script a lot, it didn't hit the right notes for the client, or they felt almost like they detached because of how overwhelming it was, that the thought of bringing me into the image. With some of the clients, sometimes they just can't see me there, in which case I'll ask, okay, is there someone in your life who you viewed as a healthy adult that could speak with authority? And let's say I had an Indian client who said, you know what, my grandfather, everyone respected him, he was kind to me, and I was able to speak from visually. She imagined him, and I would speak through him and do the empathic confrontation of the parents. So
I'll just pause you there, because I think you've just said some really amazing things that I just want to make sure we stay with and clarify. But I think, isn't that just a beautiful, simple twist to say auntie or uncle, or depending on the gender, that allows you to then do the imagery? And I know, calling people by their first names is probably just really disrespectful in some cultures, an adult figure. So that's a lovely little thing. And also, I think finding the right person. I actually sometimes worry in schema therapy we go too quick for the therapist being the person to and because I'm like heavily into the EMDR world as well, like one thing I often do is, because sometimes you cannot find anyone who's kind of non-contaminated within their actual real world. So we will have people they don't know who are sort of public figures that represent that real adult that would come in and do that work. But the other thing, I just wanted to go back to the limited reparenting, and hopefully this doesn't get kicked out of the ISST, but to be honest, I don't explain reparenting to my clients in that way at all. Like a lot of people would have seen my duck videos, and really I just talk about modeling the healthy adult role and helping them learn how to meet their needs. And that's how I really cover reparenting. And I think it's probably, I think theoretically it makes sense to us to talk about it in that way, but for a lot of people, myself included, I think it's quite an uncomfortable concept to think that someone's reparenting you. That may not fit that well. So anyway, we'll talk next week if I've still got my membership.
No, but it's a valid point. And you know what? Clients are so clever. They go and listen to all the podcasts. They read all the books. Sometimes I think they've read more books than I have. And they go and they search all the YouTube videos, and then they'll come back and go, hey, I found this. And then we end up having a conversation about that. So I think it's making sure we're prepared. And
yes, absolutely. Like if you've got someone who's done their homework and there's a worry about that concept. But certainly just actually many of the words, even though I'm, and Jeff Young is very big in his development of the model that we should talk like real people and as if we were talking to friends. But I still find a lot of people will use words like detached protector with clients and things like that, whereas I'm more for, like, people might call it their zombie mode or their this. I would actually get them to come up with a word rather than say, this is your compliance surrender mode sort of thing. But everyone's sort of different in terms of how they see that. But I think there is so much that can be made totally tailored to the people that we work with, and that's very integral to a lot of what, if you listen to Jeff Young's talk and things that he's written, it is really about, this should be for that person. We're never manualizing schema therapy, so it's like, this is the right way to do it. And a lot of what you're bringing to this is just some ways that people can make sure that that happens in a culturally respectful way for Asian clients in particular. So it's just great. I think that's, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Apart from that, so that's the imagery work. I'll just quickly touch on, I guess, the chair work in terms of, this is more, I don't think this is specific to just Asian clients, but I do notice that it is particularly beneficial for my Asian clients. So
I think I know exactly what you're going to say.
Do you?
I'm surprised. What do they?
I'm excited to share. Okay, well, so firstly, chair work is something I used to be very uncomfortable doing, and it was one of the areas that I really worked on. And Ruth Holt, who was one of my other supervisors, she was fabulous in guiding me through this. And when we watch back the videos, even though it's so painful, but it's so helpful, we would often talk about, tuning into more and more of the client's body language when doing chair work, because Asian clients, they do relate to physiological symptoms a lot of time more than let's say emotional or cognitive. But I find it so powerful with my Asian clients to really teach them to notice their body in different modes, because sometimes they get too caught up with what's happening up here in terms of like, is it this mode or is that mode? But if you lean into the feeling in your body, you can create, I guess, a way, like a shortcut way of kind of figuring out, am I in zombie mode, or is this my, my little mode or my vulnerable mode? And so it actually teaches them to reattune to their bodies, which I really like. And so I find that helpful. And I don't think that's just limited to Asian clients. I think that's helpful for any client to be attuned to their bodies.
So just to clarify, what you're saying is you're finding that your Asian clients were being too cognitive with it, and you wanted to get more into the emotion, and the way to do that is to notice physiology. That's really
absolutely good. That helped. Was that what you thought I had?
No, I thought it was going to be, and I've had a real run of this coming through my supervision and consultation, where people as clients are saying, it feels like play acting and I'm not doing it, but no, this is a different thing. And actually, you know what, back when I really got into chair work, so I did some training with Scott Kellogg, and I remember that, because I love the body-based stuff, being a trauma therapist, just recognizing that people actually feel these huge physical shifts between the chairs. So you can't get everybody to sit in chairs, but in the times where you can, there are deeply different felt states. And I guess for some people, you need to hook them more into that. But certainly whenever I work with chairs, I'm always like, how does that feel in your body in this chair? And the different verb in that chair? And then that really helps them notice their mode shifting in the outside world, because they've got that real felt sense connection to it, which I think is a lot of what happens is so quick, and it's happening on an emotional and physical level before you even catch your thoughts. So really, if you can go on that channel, just with a lot of therapy, that's something I just really love. But yeah, that's so interesting. And so I'm curious about that actually, because, you know, a group of people that also struggle with anything experiential are the people who don't want to access the body. But it sounds like in just, I mean, we're generalizing, I'm sure there's some, but in the experience that you've had, that actually accessing the body is not a challenge.
So because it's, I give feedback, and I think I do it with curiosity, and I say, I just notice, you know, the way that you're holding yourself there. Were you aware of that? And often they're like, no, I had no idea, because I'll say, oh, I noticed you were holding yourself like this, or I noticed that you turned your body away a little bit, or I can see like your shoulders getting activated. And so when I give them that feedback, often they go, oh, okay. And I said, I was just wondering what's happening internally, and then we can, I guess, explore that a little bit more. So if I think if I approach it very slowly with curiosity, then it seems to be well received, versus going in too strongly with how's that in your body, and then they feel, whoa, like, because often I think with clients, they also want to give us the right answer, even though we say there's no right or wrong answer here. How you feel is how you feel, and that's okay. But I think just even the way that questions are positioned with clients who do have that strong, you know, like people pleasing or compliant surrender mode, they want to give you the right response.
I think that's good. So it does sound like you're coming at it through bringing observations to the body, and then working from there, and that's comfortable for your clients, which is great.
Yeah, definitely.
Just thinking we've got a little bit more time, but perhaps we should finish up with what's happening next for you. So what can others who are interested in do to get involved, and you know, any upcoming projects that you'd like to tell us about?
Yes, I've been busy. There's been a lot going on. So I've recently, like literally just as of last week, joined as a collaborator on an international project that one of Professor Arnold Ans's, I think, PhD students is running, looking at all the schema questionnaires across different cultures and languages. So there's a lot of people involved in this. We're working on translations in, whether it be in Mandarin. I think we've got India, Korea, there's a lot of countries. It's not just Asia, so it's quite a big global project. So I'm still waiting to be updated on that, but I literally just joined that last week. I'm organizing 2 roundtables for the ISST conference in Poland next year. So one will be an in-person one, and one is online. I will not actually be at the in-person one because I unfortunately can't make it, but we're going in under the same abstract, which is having a look at, so I actually tied it into the theme for the conference, which is around, I think the theme was how can schema therapy promote healthy modes? And so I've positioned the question of what do healthy schemas and modes actually look like in different cultures, and Asian culture being the one, a topic where we can raise questions like enmeshment, you know, compliant surrender mode, filial piety.
Actually, I'm just so sad that this is right at the end, because we could talk more about this, but I'm just sort of thinking about the happy child mode and how that might look, especially
or not look.
Like, do we have to work on that a lot? Just with the unrelenting standards, the emotional inhibition. I mean, it's very important to help people have access to that, given those two are often really strongly reinforced by the culture. So yeah, beautiful. I think that's the perfect conference theme for, you know, some of the work that
I borrowed that question in as part of I'm still writing up the abstract, so I'm like, that could actually be one of the topics to be discussed from Nadine. So yeah, that's I think that's going to be good. So that will be at the conference next year, and then the exciting thing for me is that I'm putting together a little workshop that I'll test out in Sydney first before taking it online or interstate, which is
can I see that on your email?
Yeah. So today I'm officially launching it. So for everyone who's listening, I can post some of the links below once Nadine makes the video live. And
either I can do it or you can do it. Just under the video, post your email list so that people who want to stay in touch.
Absolutely. They can
get your emails.
Have a look at the website, join up for the mailing list so I can update. I'm always trying to share resources. So the workshop is about how we can integrate culture into clinical practice for Asian heritage populations. A lot of it is based on the work from the research from the interviews I did, my own clinical work, some of the literature from, I guess most of the literature in, I guess, this population tends to come from CBT. So it's all bringing it together, hopefully, to create a very positive experience for clinicians of any background, not just Asian clinicians.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us. As I suspected, it's been delightful. You're always wonderful to spend time with, and we'll keep up to date with what you're doing. It's always welcome in the group, and I really tried strongly to make it a diversity inclusive space. So definitely let us know and post your stuff into the group when it's coming. We would love to see it. So Danny and I just have a quick chat after we leave the live stream. So thank you, Danny, again for being here, and thanks for those who joined us live and for those who have watched the recording and are still here with us now.
Thanks, Adina. Thank you, everyone, for being involved.
Bye, everyone.